Hi, I'm Shane Schick, Editor-in-Chief of IT World Canada, and I've known Sheryl Steinberg for many years as a PR person and the strategic media brain behind companies like Lexmark and many others. Now she's morphed into a completely new role as a novelist, and she's just published her first book. It's called Opportunity Rings, and it deals with a lot of the same kind of situations that people in the marketing world today are facing in terms of getting up to speed on technologies, explaining it to the business world, and juggling technology between their personal and business life. Sheryl is also a writer on women in technology for the Globe Style section, and I'm really pleased to have her with us today. Sheryl, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Shane.
We've done a lot of stories looking at sort of the numbers of women in the technology industry. Usually the numbers haven't been great, and there's been a lot of efforts to try to get young women or girls in school to start looking at careers in technology. And usually we're looking at it from more of the engineer of some sort or becoming a software developer. One area that I've noticed over the years where women have been fairly successful and in good numbers is in the marketing side. That there are a lot of women who have successfully taken very senior leadership roles in providing strategic direction around the messaging of bringing technology to the masses. Why do you think maybe there's been so much success in that sphere and less in the actual kind of hardcore technical stuff that we associate maybe more with men?
Yeah, this is just, I'm not a researcher or anything. I do believe that generally speaking, and I think, if you look at any industry, there are a lot of women in marketing and communications roles, and I think women generally, and this is, what I've read, are good communicators.
Yeah.
So I think that could be part of it. In terms of why women aren't perhaps going into the more technical side of the industry, and I've spoken to some experts in this area, and they're saying that numbers are actually dropping. Even if you look at numbers in more technology-based universities like Waterloo, I think the numbers are dropping when you'd expect them to increase. I don't know why that is. I do think that something happens in the socialization process of girls. I think my daughter is 12, and she's taken web programming courses, and she's pretty savvy. For 12 years old, she's pretty savvy. And I'm hoping that continues, but I think there's something in socialization process that happens to girls when they're in, they're 14, 15, 16, where it's not cool.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a geek,
yeah.
To use that term loosely. And I think something happens where it just it takes young girls on a different course. I was recently at a Microsoft event where they brought in different classes of, I believe they were junior high school girls, maybe grade 7 or 8, where they brought them in to show them that technology can be fun, and there's it's the future, and there's some amazing things that you can do. So keep your eyes open and consider it as a choice.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like in some ways this book almost couldn't have been written 5+ years ago, because there's a great comedic device that you use throughout, which is kind of creating at the beginning of each chapter these kind of error messages or kind of the messages we would see on our screens that are sort of a multiple choice of that sort of test people's technology. Now, in covering the industry and being involved in it, I got it immediately, and I thought it was hilarious. And then I thought, well, it's really interesting because I almost wouldn't have thought that the average person a couple of years ago would have got some of these jokes about what cookies are in an IT setting. How confident were you, I guess, in the the digital literacy of your potential audience, that they could? What was the tipping point for you that said, well, now the market is ready for this kind of a book? Because I don't know if it would have been 4 or 5 years ago.
Right. Well, let me give you a little bit of history. 4 or 5 years ago, I was a technology publicist / writer, and in my spare time, I was also a freelance writer, and I was writing for one of Canada's leading women's magazine. On the side, I was writing, articles about, how to save time, how to save money, very lifestyle based. And I came up with this brainstorm. I thought, wow, I should marry my two worlds. And I spoke to one of my editors at this magazine, and I pitched her on this article about women and technology, how, technology didn't have to be boring, it didn't have to be intimidating or complicated. And I thought to make it more fun, even more fun, I would have a sidebar, and the sidebar would be this sort of takeoff, a twist on the sexy Cosmo quiz that women, for years and years and years have been, loving. So, but the questions would be sort of tech inspired, and they would be a little bit edgy and provocative, but fun. And in the process, test women's knowledge on their technology, on their
expertise.
So my editor at the time said, "Great idea! I'd love to read the article. Let me know when someone publishes it. Our readers aren't ready for it." And I hung up the phone, and I'm like, "Oh, that's." It falls into that same stereotype, and I just can't get past that. So I was talking to a friend of mine, Andy Walker, who's a technology journalist, and I said to him, he said to me, "Women will read about technology, you just have to package it in a way that's meaningful and relevant to them." So it was just before the summer holidays, and when I go on summer holidays, I always take my stack of fun women's fiction, so the Bridget Jones and the Sophie Kinsella type books, sometimes some serious books too. But it occurred to me that there's no less intimidating a format than the fun women's fiction. And I thought, why don't I create a story about a woman who works in technology but doesn't really get it, and over the course of the story, she empowers herself and she finds out that it doesn't have to be complicated, boring, or intimidating. And then I thought, you know what? Somehow along the line, I'm going to have to integrate that quiz, because it was too much fun to let go. And so when I was writing in the back of my mind, I knew I would use it. And when it was actually, I think about half done, I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start each chapter with one of those questions and try to tie in the chapter in terms of what was happening in the story with the questions. And what I didn't expect to do, and what I did was, as you know, I ended up putting all those questions into the storyline at the end. So it actually came together quite nicely.
Yeah.